Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week, we feature a special interview with the Canadian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Jamie Christophe, done during his brief stopover in Lagos just a while ago. Mr. Christophe addresses issues of visa policy and upcoming partnerships with Nigeria based on deep diplomatic and economic ties between his country and Nigeria. In the meantime, will Israel agree to a new Hamas ceasefire? The U.S. seems to think so, despite Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's insistence he is not open to a deal before eliminating the terrorist group. We have more of that coming up. First, a quick check and other discussions in diplomatic circles, and we'll be right back.
The federal government of Nigeria has condemned in the strongest possible terms what it says is the onslaught on defenseless civilians in Gaza as the Israel-Hamas war rages on. A statement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, highlighted the attacks displacement camps in Rafah in southern Gaza, which killed 45 people. The minister says the attack represents an unfortunate addition to the list of strikes on soft targets with devastating consequences which have characterized the crisis. He goes on to say that Nigeria is as grossly concerned about the safety and welfare of the civilian population of Gaza as it is about the protection of the dignity and sacredness of human life in the enclave. In the meantime, a major protest took place in the Israeli city of Tel Aviv on Sunday, demonstrators demanding the resumption of negotiations after US President Joe Biden announced the proposed deal to end the fighting in Gaza. Protesters held signs and banners demanding release of the hostages.
I think this government doesn't care about the life of the citizens of Israel. They don't care about our lives. They just want corruption. They want the Messiah to come. They want to expel all the Arabs. They want this country to fight forever. They don't care about the people who live here. Okay? That's why I go with the sign that says life. Okay? Whoever wants life should stop the war. Whoever wants life should bring the hostages home. Whoever wants life should bring peace to this country. No bloodshed.
We need the government of Israel to make the right decision. And the right decision is to reach an agreement as offered by and organized with the assistance of President Biden. This agreement must be accepted. We must release the hostages. We must put an end to this war, to the bloodshed, and we must build a future of hope for the people of the Middle East.
So we are here after almost 8 months of this terrible war that has brought only destruction and killing and suffering and did not bring back the Israeli hostages. We are here to tell our government to stop this war, to reach a ceasefire right now, to recognize the fact that we are killing innocent Palestinians in Rafah and in Palestine and in Gaza, and to say only a ceasefire agreement will bring back our hostages. Only a ceasefire agreement will bring us safety. Standing Together is a Jewish-Palestinian movement, and we are here to say that only if we go in the opposite direction, we can actually resolve this problem and not make it even bigger.
Fighting in Gaza has entered the 8th month after Hamas launched an unprecedented attack on southern Israel on October 7, killing 1,139 people, mostly civilians, and kidnapping over 200, according to Israeli officials.
Коллеги, решать в том числе
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Washington is satisfied that Ukraine is its tool in the fight against Russia. So the Kyiv authorities are forgiven for what he says are acts of introducing Nazi theory and practice. Mr. Lavrov was speaking in Moscow over the weekend. He also expressed the view that the Baltic and Eastern European countries have the most intolerant attitude towards Russia among EU and NATO countries, saying, "If we look at the situation in NATO and the EU today, the Baltic states, together with the Poles and the Czechs, are the most aggressive group in the European structures. These countries, of all countries, initiate the most Russophobic positions and actions of the European Union and the North Atlantic Alliance." Moscow launched a military offensive in Ukraine late February 2022 after recognizing the independence of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, claiming that Kyiv had failed to guarantee their special status under the 2014 Minsk agreements, and urging Ukraine to declare itself officially neutral and give assurances that it would never join NATO.
Welcome back. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says the U.S. government has every expectation Israel will accept a ceasefire proposal that will begin a 6-week cessation of hostilities in Gaza. The 3-part plan unveiled by President Joe Biden last week would also be a surge of humanitarian aid as well as an exchange of some hostages for Palestinian prisoners before a permanent end to the war. The proposal, however, has met with vocal opposition from some members of Israel's government. The negotiations come as fighting continues in Rafah, which came under intense Israeli airstrikes over the weekend. The attack on Rafah has drawn more international attention, with the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, saying that all 36 of its shelters in the Rafah area are empty after residents were forced to flee. Another 1.7 million people are estimated to be displaced in Han Yunis and in parts of central Gaza. But the U.S. is confident Israel is open to a ceasefire deal on Gaza. The U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby told ABC News on Sunday the U.S. has every expectation that Israel would say yes to the proposed ceasefire deal if Hamas accepts. He says the U.S. is waiting for an official response from Hamas and that the U.S. hopes that both sides agree to start the first phase of the plan as soon as possible. During the initial 6-week pause in the fighting, according to Kirby, the two sides will sit down and try to negotiate what Phase 2 could look like and when that could begin. U.S. President Joe Biden had said last week the second phase of the plan would see all remaining living hostages returned, including male soldiers. The ceasefire will then become the cessation of hostilities permanently. On Saturday, however, two far-right Israeli ministers threatened to quit and collapse the country's governing coalition if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to the deal.
There are American hostages who would be released at this stage, and we want them home. The United States will help ensure that Israel lives up to their obligations as well. That's what this deal says. That's what it says. And we'll do our part. This is truly a decisive moment. Israel has made their proposal. Hamas says it wants a ceasefire. This deal is an opportunity to prove whether they really mean it. Hamas needs to take the deal. For months, people all over the world have called for a ceasefire. Now it's time to raise your voices and demand that Hamas come to the table, agrees to this deal, and end this war that they began. Palestinian people have endured sheer hell in this war. Too many innocent people have been killed, including thousands of children. Far too many have been badly wounded. We all saw the terrible images from the deadly fire in Rafah earlier this week, following an Israeli strike against targeting Hamas. And even as we work to surge assistance to Gaza, with 1,800 trucks delivering supplies these last 5 days, 1,800, the humanitarian crisis still remains. It's time to begin this new stage, for the hostages to come home, for Israel to be secure, for the suffering to stop. It's time for this war to end.
Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said they were opposed to striking any deal before Hamas was destroyed. Netanyahu, on his part, has insisted there will be no ceasefire until Hamas's military and governing capabilities are destroyed and all hostages are released. And now to our special feature this week. The Canadian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Jamie Christophe, is not much of a talker, but when he does speak, it's after much thought and careful analysis, as you'll find in this interview. As you already know, over the last 5 years or so, Canada has become a destination for study, work and living for many Nigerians. And the number had been increasing until recently, when Canada decided to put a cap on the number of immigrants entering the country. Trade relations between Nigeria and Canada has also increased. As of 2022, Nigeria was Canada's largest bilateral merchandise trading partner in Africa, totaling $2.2 billion. And there are more areas of partnership, as you'll find in my discussion with High Commissioner Jamie Christophe. High Commissioner Jamie Christophe, thank you so much for speaking with us and for coming to Lagos. I notice you've been coming more often, in recent times. You must love it here.
Well, I fell in love with the city in 2017 when I came to Nigeria for my first installment as a diplomat working here at the Deputy High Commission. Lagos is energetic, innovative, bright, fantastic, and upon coming back in my current iteration as High Commissioner, it's always a pleasure to return to Lagos, where I have a lot of friends and connections, personal and professional.
But your office is in Abuja. That's a different vibe, isn't it?
It is obviously the seat of government, and so a different role I have there. My job really is to interact with the host government and help forward objectives that I think are in both countries' interests. But I do enjoy when I'm able to come back to Lagos. That is for sure.
You've worked in Nigeria before, as you rightly said. You were here in 2021, I believe, as Deputy High Commissioner. It's also not your first time in Africa. You have served in Kenya, you've also served in South Sudan, but Nigeria is your first posting into West Africa. What are the differences you've observed in the different regions in Africa?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and it's important because Africa indeed is a very large and diverse continent, and so all of my experiences have been unique and I think reflective of the countries that I've been serving in. But as I compare Nigeria to others, I think going back to something I said earlier, it's the energy, the dynamism, the entrepreneurial spirit that really is invigorating here in Nigeria, and it reverberates in ways that you don't see often in other countries. And so it gives me a lot to focus on and do while I'm here, and it's a pleasure to serve in Nigeria.
A lot of Nigerians have been moving to Canada, especially after the pandemic. There was this season of, we call it the exodus. A lot of skilled Nigerians made their way to Canada to live, to work, to school. Has this helped with cementing relations between the two countries?
Absolutely. Nigeria is our fifth largest source of immigrants to Canada, and so it's a large and growing diaspora. And really, as I like to say, with so many Nigerians who have a foot in either country now, it serves as a bridge, if you will, between the two countries, and it's something I think I take a great deal of pride in my meetings and interactions with Nigerians. many of whom have family or friends or others who are living, studying, and working in Canada. So it gives us a point of connection that allows us to reach for other things in the relationship.
Speaking of which, the Canadian government has been, in recent months, trying to narrow the immigration route. Nigerians have felt this. The country is trying to cope with economic realities, just like other countries. But many see this as a backlash on immigrants who fear that they could become targets by other people in the country, for being there and posing such a burden on social amenities.
So Canada is a country of immigrants. It has been built on the backs of many immigrants, my own family being one. Many of my friends and colleagues also come from first and second generation immigrant backgrounds. And so we take it as a point of pride in Canada that our large, diverse, multi-ethnic country provides a unifying fabric. We remain open to all immigrants and welcoming. In terms of what you mentioned about changes in policy, our skilled worker program is still very much a program through which we bring in a lot of skilled talent into Canada, sometimes on an express program, which allows for faster facilitation to really serve our economic needs in terms of the skills that we're looking for in people. We have seen, you will have noted, a slight change and a cap on our student visa program. That's a 2-year cap. And really came about as a need that was born out of housing shortages we have in Canada right now. So as much as we'd like to take more, we need to maintain a certain cap for the time being in order to adjust our housing profile and make sure everybody has access to housing.
So some have suggested, instead of targeting immigrants, why don't you just increase social welfare? I mean, you're going to have people anyway in the country. You're still going to have, your population growth. So why not just increase social welfare?
So it's a good question. You're right, but I'm quite confident that at all 3 levels of government, so like Nigeria, Canada is a federal system, and at all 3 levels of government, I think the kind of challenges that we're all facing are being met within the respective authorities. And I'm confident in the months and years to come that we will help shape and address those needs that were really, feeding into the decisions that brought about some of the caps on students in particular. So I have confidence in the way that we're going, and we'll see where things go from here. But to be unequivocal, Canada is most certainly open to immigration. And we have a large and growing Nigerian diaspora, which we're quite proud of.
And how are Canadian businesses coping with, the economic challenges here in Nigeria?
So our business community here, some of whom have been long-standing, we do what we can, not just to help with our business community that is here, but one of my key jobs is to encourage more Canadian companies to take a closer look at Nigeria. I'm quite optimistic, actually, about making that case to our business community. Nigeria is the second largest economy on this continent, a very large domestic consumer market. There are some key sectors in which Canadian companies, I think, can bring either expertise or talent or services that I think mesh well with Nigerian opportunities. And so through our office here in Lagos, which is primarily focused on building our trade opportunities, I'm quite certain that in the months and years to come, we can take already a very good commercial relationship between Canada and Nigeria and make it even better. Actually, Nigeria is our largest trading partner in Africa. That's a good starting point, but I think we can make more of it, and I'm convinced we'll get there.
What about Nigerian businesses in Canada?
Actually, Nigeria is our largest investor into Canada from this continent. again, an excellent starting place. And I look forward in the coming months and during my tenure here to take that and find ways to augment it to the benefit of both countries.
I know a lot of Nigerians will want to know, the visa processing to Canada. It's a long one. It's also rigorous, quite tasking, I think, for some people. Why is it like that?
I think I won't comment too much on the process as being particular and rigorous. I will say I agree with you objectively. It's taken a bit of time, or it does take time. A lot of that is a result of volume. Now, how we've addressed that, we've put technology, people, and process on the table, looked at it to kind of find ways to shorten those timelines. And I must say, I think we've achieved some positive results in that regard. There's always more work to be done, but indeed, Canada is a primary destination for visitors from Nigeria, and we'll always look to see the best ways in order to facilitate them getting there. Bit of advice, I would just say fill it out accurately and in totality. I mean, sometimes this is where the delays take place, is when the application is not filled out properly. But on the assumption it is, and all the information's been recorded properly, the documentation is there, we'd like to think that we can move as quickly as we can to make sure that person gets an answer one way or the other as quickly as possible.
Do you run background checks on these applicants?
I'm not involved in the visa process. It really doesn't fall to the head of mission or the high commissioner to manage that. So I won't speak too much on the process. I will just say that it just requires documentation and for everything to be filled out properly.
Back to bilateral ties. You've noticed a lot of Nigerians come to Canada. And there is no direct flight from Nigeria to Canada despite this influx on a regular basis.
Yes, you're right, actually. And interestingly, you should ask, we're in the final stages of ratifying an air transport agreement between the two countries. In theory, this could open up the way for direct flights between our countries. I don't think we're quite there yet, but there is a case to be made. There's a tremendous amount of air traffic between Lagos and Abuja in Canada. It just generally gets routed through London or Frankfurt. So at some point, I think, this may come to fruition in the years down the road, and I think it would be a fantastic way to cement the relationship. We're also trying to establish negotiations on a foreign investment protection agreement between the two countries. Another piece of legislation that would help underpin and underscore the trade and investment relationship between the two countries. We've got a bit further to go on that, but I think it's another important step. I know Minister Tugar was recently in Ottawa to visit with our Foreign Minister, Mélanie Joly. They had a wide-ranging and very positive discussion. I know trade was discussed there as well. So in many ways, these people-to-people ties are setting off the conversation and really allowing deeper discussions that cover the full spectrum of our relationship with Nigeria.
High Commissioner Jamie Christoph, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much.
This is where we end the program this week. I hope it's been informative. Perhaps you have comments you'd like to share. You can do so using any of the social media handles showing on your screen. Also, you can watch this edition and others on Channels TV's playlist on YouTube. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.